Hi everyone, my name is Chad and I work at the Killaby Center for Recovery. And some of you may have seen my post recently about losing my mother, actually 4 weeks ago. And I wanted to do a little update about my kind of journey with grief and presence work. Because this is the first time I think I've been consciously trying to use presence work with deep grief. I've just a little background. I lost my mother 4 weeks ago. Before that, my husband, and then before that, my father. So in the span of 6 years, my life has changed dramatically in every way you can pretty much think of. And so this isn't a pity type of talk or anything, because we all go through this. We all will go through this in some variation or another, grief and loss. And some people will have it in short spurts, and it'll be different obviously for every single person. And there's actually a wonderful TED talk that I just saw about people who mean well, trying to help people who are going through grief, essentially trying to get them to move on. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about, but I'll post a link to that TED Talk because it's very, very interesting, and it was very helpful for me, because that is kind of our and I'm guilty of it too. Our kind of idea is we'll help these people by showing them, oh, there's better days, or you're sad now, but it'll get better. It'll get better. And the overall message of this talk that I was just talking about is that you don't really get over these things. You move on, and that's very much the case I've found. But I also want to talk about presence work with this because, like I said, when I had my first two losses, I really didn't dive as deeply, especially at first, into this because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't realize that there were ways to navigate this kind of deep loss better, manageable for me. So yeah, this is more about how I want to convey how I am processing this loss differently than the other two losses that I've had, and that is that I'm embracing the emotions, I'm embracing the feelings, and embracing doesn't mean I love them. It means that I'm not running away from them. I'm not avoiding them. Many people, especially in the first stages of grief, you turn to avoidance measures, drinking, traveling, whatever it is. You're trying to get away. It's fight or flight, and I certainly have had that, and I think a lot of people do. Those first few days of a deep loss and grief are really just mind-numbing. You don't. I couldn't have even began to thought, okay, I need to do breathing exercises, or I need to do this or that. I wasn't in that stage. I was just crying every 20 minutes. That's where my grief stage was. Eventually, after 3 or 4 days, that changed, and I started to notice how I was avoiding grief. I guess, I just want to feel better in the moment, so I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to whatever, just to stay away from that. So that's where I was in those first few days, but I recognized it where I didn't recognize it in my other past griefs. And recognizing it is huge. It really is big. So once I recognize, I'm like, okay, now I can take the steps to mitigate the pain. And I don't mean mitigate as cover it up, but work through it and not avoid it, really is what it comes down to, because it's avoidance. You don't, the body, the mind, you don't want to feel that way. You want to feel better. And grief is not feeling better. It's not about feeling better. It's about that lost loved one and what you have lost with losing them. So my big takeaway from this is that running full steam into the pain has been so much more healing than running away from it. So what I would say is, when you have a deep grief, a deep loss, you know, after those first couple days, however long it is, where you're just emotionally a puddle, you can't even think straight. Once that has passed, recognize where you are right then. Recognize whether you're trying to avoid that pain, because you cannot avoid that pain. You can stuff it down. You can gulp it down in your throat. You can keep it locked up. It's there. It's there. It's going to stay there until you deal with it, and it's going to stay there in some form because you've had a loss. But managing that loss is infinitely better than avoiding that loss. So that's my overall message for this kind of follow up to my post about losing my mom is I'm never not going to miss her. There's never going to be a day that I'm not going to think about her. This was a person who I was incredibly close to my entire life that I will miss. I do miss. I miss her this moment. I miss her. But I recognize that loss, and I recognize that pain, and I recognize that grief, and I'm not trying to run away from it, which is big, because everybody around us, as supportive and loving as I've had in my life, this pod of community, they want you to heal, they want you to move on, and that's great, but you've got to do it on your own terms too. And you've got to, one of those terms for me is running through that grief, not running away from it. Thanks for listening.